My name is Ethan. I'm 39 years old. And on June 12th, 2023, I died in the wreckage of my truck on a dusty road in Oklahoma. I was clinically dead for 22 minutes. What I saw in that time, what I was shown, changed everything I thought I knew about life, about death, and about the very air we breathe. The one I met there, Jesus, didn't show me a vision of hellfire or a literal apocalypse. He showed me something far more subtle and far more terrifying. He showed me a storm, a spiritual megastorm that is already here, a storm that is drowning entire states without a single drop of rain. And his warning, it should terrify all of us. Before that day, my life was the sky. I was a storm chaser. It wasn't just a job or a hobby. It was an obsession, a calling. I lived for the strange, electric green of a tornadic sky, the rumble of thunder that you feel in your teeth, the raw, untamable power of nature. My home was a modest house with a porch swing and a mortgage, but my real home was the driver's seat of my heavily modified truck, a beast of steel and electronics I called the Arbiter. I had a wife, Sarah, whose love was the only thing more constant than the jet stream. We had a son, Leo, who was 7 years old and had my eyes but his mother's gentle heart. My life was supposed to be about them. Paying the bills, coaching Little League, family dinners. And I did those things. I went through the motions. But my heart, my soul, was always scanning the horizon. I was waiting for the next chase. I have to be honest about who I was. I was an addict. My drug wasn't a substance, it was adrenaline. It was the roar of a supercell. I felt more alive, more myself, when I was 10 miles from a forming funnel cloud than I ever did sitting on the couch watching a movie with my family. There was a pride in it, a deep, corrosive pride. I was good at what I did. I understood the atmosphere. I could read the signs. I had contempt for the amateurs who got too close, who didn't respect the power. I thought I was different. I thought I had a special understanding, a kind of pact with the chaos. In my mind, the storms were for me. Everyone else was just getting what was left over. My family, especially. They got the tired Ethan, the distracted Ethan, the Ethan who was checking radar maps on his phone under the dinner table. They got the shell of a man whose spirit was 1,000 miles away, dancing with the wind. The morning it happened, the air was already thick and expectant. You could feel it. A storm was brewing, a big one. The kind I lived for. I was packing the Arbiter, checking my cameras, my GPS, my comms. Sarah came out to the driveway. She had that look in her eyes, the one I had learned to ignore. "Ethan, don't go," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it was heavier than any thunder. "It's a perfect setup, Sarah," I said, not really looking at her, my hands busy securing a tripod. "This could be the one." "They're all the one," she said, and the sadness in her voice was a physical thing. "Just stay home. For one day. For us." I finally turned and looked at her. I saw the fear she tried to hide. I saw the loneliness. And I dismissed it. "I'll be careful," I said, with the easy confidence of a fool. I always am. This is what I do. It pays the bills. It was a lie. We both knew it. My chasing cost more than it ever made. It was never about the money. Leo ran out and hugged my leg. "Catch a big tornado, Daddy," he said, his little face full of excitement, because he didn't know any better. I knelt down and tousled his hair. "The biggest," I promised. I gave Sarah a quick, distracted kiss. Her lips were tight. I didn't say, "I love you." I didn't hold her for an extra second. I just got in the truck, my mind already on the convergence zones and the dew points. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that little moment of selfishness, that casual dismissal of her love, would come back to haunt me with the force of 1,000 storms. By late afternoon, I was deep in the heart of it. The sky was a masterpiece of violence. It had turned a bruised, sickly shade of green and purple. The clouds weren't just clouds. They were structures, mountains of churning energy that scraped the heavens. The sirens had been wailing for miles, a constant, lonely song across the flat plains. I was in my element. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a kind of holy ecstasy. This was it. This was real. I saw it form. It started as a small, elegant funnel, a gray finger reaching down from the belly of the mothership cloud. But it grew. Fast. It wasn't elegant anymore. It was a monster, a thick, roaring wedge of blackness, a mile wide, chewing up the earth. I was tracking it, staying parallel, getting incredible footage. I was so arrogant. I thought I knew its rhythm, its dance. I misjudged. Or maybe it misjudged me. A satellite tornado, a smaller vortex orbiting the main one, dropped out of the murk right in front of me. I had seconds. Not enough. There was a sound I can't describe. It wasn't just loud. It was a physical presence. It was the sound of creation and destruction at the same instant. The world stopped being horizontal. The arbiter, my fortress of steel, was lifted off the ground like it was a child's toy. I remember the feeling of weightlessness. Then the violence. The truck was tumbling, end over end. Metal screamed. Glass didn't shatter, it exploded into dust. The sky and the earth were a blender, and I was in the middle of it. I wasn't thinking about dew points anymore. I wasn't thinking about getting the perfect shot. In that final, chaotic split second, as my world was torn apart by the very thing I worshipped, only two words formed in my mind. Not even words, just names. Sarah. Leo. It was a prayer of pure regret. And then everything went black. The sound cut out. The violence ceased. There was no pain. There was no chaos. There was only a profound, absolute silence. A perfect, velvet blackness. Then, a sensation. A gentle pull. A feeling of rising, like a balloon released from a child's hand. I was floating. Weightless. Effortless. The blackness slowly resolved into a scene. I was looking down. I was maybe 20 feet in the air, near the mangled, twisted roof of what used to be my truck. It was wrapped around a telephone pole, barely recognizable as a vehicle. And I saw myself. My body was in the driver's seat, slumped, broken. It was a strange thing to see. It was like looking at a jacket I'd taken off and thrown on the floor. It was mine, I recognized it, but it wasn't me. Not anymore. I felt no fear. I felt no pain. What I felt, more than anything, was a deep, tranquil peace. A sense of detachment. The storm had passed. The sky was beginning to clear in the distance. I watched as the first emergency vehicles arrived, lights flashing but silent from my perspective. I saw the paramedics run to the truck. I saw them use heavy tools to pry open the door. I saw the look on the face of a young firefighter as he looked inside. He shook his head grimly. I felt a pang, but it wasn't for myself. It was for them. I felt sorry for their panic, for their grim work. They were trying so hard to save a body that was already empty. I wanted to tell them, it's okay, I'm all right, but I had no voice. The feeling of peace was so complete, so absolute. It was the absence of all the things that had defined my life. The striving, the wanting, the pride, the adrenaline. All of it was gone. And in its place, there was just stillness. Then, the scene below me began to change. It started at the edges, like a photograph burning from the outside in. The colors began to run together. The mangled truck, the flashing lights, the worried faces of the first responders, they started to lose their sharp edges. The scene grew faint, translucent. It was like a watercolor painting left out in the rain, the distinct lines and shapes blurring into a wash of muted color. It was like trying to hold on to a dream just after waking up. The harder I tried to focus on it, the faster it slipped away. The world I knew, the world I had just been ripped from, was dissolving. And I was not afraid. I was letting go of it as easily as I would let go of a rope I was never meant to hold. The blackness returned, but it was different this time. It wasn't empty. It was comforting. It was a womb. And in the center of that darkness, a point of light appeared. Small at first, like a distant star. But it grew. It expanded, not with a flash, but with a gentle blooming, pushing the darkness away. It wasn't a harsh, sterile light. It was warm, golden, and it felt like love. The light became everything. I was inside it. It was inside me. And then the light resolved into a place. It wasn't a grand throne room or a city of gold. There were no gates, no choirs of angels. I was standing in a field. But it was the most real field that has ever existed. The grass wasn't just green. It was 1,000 shades of emerald and jade, and each blade seemed to hum with its own life. The air didn't just feel fresh, it was peace. I was breathing in pure, unadulterated peace. The sky above was a color I have no name for, a swirling, gentle tapestry of light and softness. And I wasn't alone. A man was walking toward me from the center of the field. He wasn't what the paintings show. He didn't have a halo. He wasn't floating or glowing with some blinding aura. He was dressed simply, in a plain, earth-toned robe. His feet were bare. He looked strong, like a man who worked with his hands, a carpenter or a stonemason. But his presence was a wave of energy that washed over me, through me. It was a feeling of love so pure, so unconditional, so overwhelming that it buckled my knees. It was a feeling of being completely known, every selfish thought I ever had, every mistake I ever made, every hidden corner of my heart laid bare. And in the face of all that knowledge, there was not one atom of judgment. There was only acceptance, only love. And then I saw his eyes. I can't describe his eyes. To try would be to cheapen them. They were full of galaxies. They were full of an ancient, heartbreaking kindness. They held all the joy and all the sorrow of creation. In that one look, I knew. There was no doubt, no question. My soul recognized him instantly. It was Jesus. He stopped a few feet from me and smiled. It was not a polite smile. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated joy. The smile of a father seeing his lost son come walking down the road. He didn't speak with his mouth. The words bloomed inside my mind, clear and resonant as a bell. "Welcome, Ethan. Be at peace. You are so loved, little one." The sound of my own name, spoken with such tenderness, broke something inside me. All the walls I had built around my heart, all the pride, all the foolish independence, it all crumbled into dust. I fell to my knees, not out of fear, but out of an awe so profound it was a physical force. And I began to weep. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness or regret. They were tears of relief, tears of homecoming. It was the cry of a man who had been running his whole life without realizing he was exhausted, and had finally been told he could stop. I felt like a little boy who had been lost in a terrifying place and had just been found by his father. I knelt there in the living grass, unworthy and exposed, and all I could feel was love pouring into me, washing away all the dirt, all the noise, all the storms I had chased. He just let me cry, his presence a silent comfort, a patient stillness that said, "All the time in the world belongs to you now." When my weeping finally subsided, I looked up at him through my tears. The shame I expected to feel was not there. Instead, I just felt a quiet longing to be near him forever. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. I couldn't. I was too aware of my own brokenness. He seemed to understand. He withdrew his hand, and his gaze became more serious, though no less loving. "There is something I need to show you, Ethan," he said, the words forming in my soul. "A storm you do not understand." As he spoke, the beautiful field around us did not vanish. Instead, it became transparent. It was as if the air itself had turned into a screen, a 360-degree theater for my soul. And what I saw first was my own life. I saw myself at the dinner table. Leo, my son, was holding up a drawing he had made at school. It was a picture of our family, with a huge, smiling sun overhead. "Look, Daddy, look what I made," his little voice said, full of pride. And I saw myself, my face illuminated by the glow of my phone, my thumb scrolling through weather data. "That's great, buddy," I'd mumbled, not even looking up. I saw the light in Leo's eyes dim. I saw him slowly lower the drawing. The vision shifted. I was in the living room with Sarah. She was telling me about her day, about a problem she was having at work. Her face was troubled. She needed me. But I wasn't listening. I was watching a documentary about tornadoes on the television, completely engrossed. I was nodding along to what she said, but my attention was a million miles away. I saw the moment she realized it, the moment she gave up and fell silent, a familiar loneliness settling over her like a blanket. I saw dozens of these moments. Me, choosing the storm over my family, choosing the noise over the quiet, choosing the thrill of the chase over the stillness of love. There was no accusation in these visions. Jesus didn't condemn me. He simply showed me the truth, and his presence was filled with a gentle, profound sadness. He was sad for the love that had been offered to me, and that I had been too blind to receive. I felt a shame so deep it was a physical ache. I had been a fool, a complete and utter fool. Then, the vision pulled back. My small, personal failures zoomed out, becoming a pixel in a much larger, more terrifying picture. I was no longer seeing my living room. I was seeing the entire country, then the entire world, as if from orbit. But I wasn't seeing land masses and oceans. I was seeing spiritual weather. And there was a storm. A megastorm. It was a swirling, global hurricane made not of wind and water, but of something far worse. It was a storm of noise, a storm of distraction, a storm of anger. I saw billions of glowing screens, phones, tablets, televisions, like toxic plankton in a dark sea. And from each screen, a torrent of energy was flowing. It was the energy of arguments, of insults slung between strangers. It was the energy of envy, of people comparing their real lives to the fake perfection they saw online. It was the energy of constant, meaningless information, a flood of breaking news and trivial updates and endless content that kept people's minds churning, never allowing for a moment of silence. And I saw what this storm was doing to people. I saw a family at a restaurant, all four of them staring at their own phones, a silent, invisible wall between them. I saw a teenager in her bedroom, weeping because of the cruel words of people she had never met. I saw men and women filled with a simmering, nameless rage, fueled by the endless stream of outrage the storm fed them every single day. They weren't being drowned by water. They were being drowned by noise. Their souls were being submerged in a flood of triviality, anxiety, and division. Then Jesus leaned in, and his voice in my soul was full of a deep, aching sorrow. Do you see, little one? The enemy is clever. He does not need to build a hell. He only needs to make the world a place so loud that my children cannot hear me. The vision continued. Jesus showed me the states that were being drowned. It wasn't California or Florida. He showed me the state of family. I saw it as a warm, glowing island. But the storm's waves of distraction and isolation were crashing against its shores, eroding it, pulling family members away from each other one by one, lost in their own little digital worlds. He showed me the state of community. I saw it as a network of sturdy bridges connecting people. But the storm's winds of anger and suspicion were tearing those bridges apart, leaving people isolated, afraid, and trusting no one. He showed me the state of peace. I saw it as a calm, clear lake. But the storm was dumping endless pollution into it, the pollution of anxiety, of constant worry, of the fear of missing out. The lake was becoming a murky, toxic swamp where nothing could live. This is the great theft, Jesus explained, his voice heavy with grief. A silent theft of connection, a silent theft of purpose, a silent theft of quiet. The enemy doesn't need to make them evil. He only needs to make them empty. He fills their hands with everything, so they have no room to hold on to me. He fills their ears with noise, so they cannot hear the still, small voice. They are drowning in information but starving for wisdom. They are weathering a storm of their own making, a storm of their own choosing, and they have forgotten that I am the one who calms the seas. The vision was almost too much to bear. The scale of the tragedy was heartbreaking. Billions of souls, adrift and drowning, while believing they were more connected and informed than ever before. I died for a relationship, Jesus said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Not for a simulation, not for an audience, for a deep, quiet, personal walk with each one of them. But they cannot walk with me if they are running a race with no finish line. The storm of visions receded, and I was back in the peaceful field, kneeling before him. The grass was still real. His love was still real. It was the only real thing left. My heart was broken for the world I had just seen. What do we do? I asked, my own soul voice a whisper. How can anyone survive that? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a fire in his kind eyes, a fire of divine power. You must tell them, he commanded, his voice gentle but with the unshakable authority of a king. Tell them to look up. Tell them to put down the glowing rectangles that steal their time and their peace. Tell them to find shelter. But the shelter is not in building thicker walls or shouting louder than the wind. The shelter is in the quiet. The shelter is in turning to the person next to them and truly seeing them. The shelter is in a genuine prayer, even a whispered one. Their smallest, most humble prayers shake the foundations of this storm. Tell them to choose what is real. The warmth of a hand, not the glow of a screen. The sound of a loved one's voice, not the cacophony of strangers. A moment of silence with me, not an hour of distraction from the world. This is the anchor in the hurricane. This is how they will find me in the storm. The finality in his words felt like a closing chapter. I knew what was coming next. And a terror, not of death, but of life, seized me. No, I pleaded, the word tearing from my soul. Please, don't send me back there. I can't. Not to that noise. Not to that storm. This is my home now. Please, let me stay with you. The thought of returning to the dim, chaotic, noisy world after experiencing this perfect peace, this overwhelming love, was an agony beyond description. It was like asking a man who had been cured of blindness to willingly put his blindfold back on. I want to stay, I begged, the tears starting again, but this time they were hot with desperation. Jesus looked at me, and his expression was one of infinite compassion. He understood. Your work is not done, Ethan, he said softly. Your family needs you. Sarah and Leo need their husband and father. Not the man who left them, but the man you are now. You chased storms of wind and rain. That was a shallow reflection of your purpose. Now you must help others find shelter from this true storm. You must be a light for them. You must go back and tell them what you saw. I'll be alone, I whispered, a feeling of cosmic loneliness already creeping in. I can't do it alone. He reached out then, and this time, he placed his hand on my shoulder. A current of pure life, of strength and love, flowed into me. It was a promise. I will never leave you, he said, his voice a bedrock of certainty in my soul. I will be with you. In the quiet moments, in the chaos, you will not be alone. Now go. The word go was not a suggestion. It was a release. It was a loving but firm push from the nest. The feeling was not of being cast out, but of being sent. I felt myself falling. The beautiful field, the sky of unknown colors, the face of pure love, it all rushed away from me, upward, as I plummeted back into the dark. The fall ended with a slam. It was a collision of spirit and flesh, and the pain was blinding. It was the pain of 1,000 broken pieces of my body, all screaming at once. The perfect silence was shattered by a monstrous noise. Sirens, shouting, the beeping of machines. The first breath I took was fire. It burned my lungs, raw and agonizing after breathing the air of heaven. My eyes flew open, and the bright, sterile lights of the ambulance ceiling were an assault. Everything was too bright, too loud, too harsh. And a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight settled on my soul. I was homesick. I was desperately, agonizingly homesick for a place I had only known for minutes. I started to cry, but these were the broken, ragged sobs of a man in mourning. A paramedic's face appeared above me. He's back. We got a pulse. He's breathing. I could feel the ambulance moving, swaying on the road. The world was back, and it was hell. The days that followed in the hospital were a blur of confusion and pain. But it was the confusion of the doctors that stood out. My primary physician, a man named Dr. Evans, stood at the foot of my bed, holding a chart and looking at me as if I were a ghost. I don't understand this, Ethan, he said, shaking his head. I've been a doctor for 30 years. I have never seen anything like this. He explained it to me, his voice full of clinical disbelief. I had been trapped in the wreckage for over 40 minutes. The paramedics on site had worked on me for 12 minutes without a response. No heartbeat, no respiration, fixed and dilated pupils. In the ambulance, they worked for another 10. Still nothing. By all medical definitions, I was gone. 22 minutes. You were dead for 22 minutes, Ethan, he said, the words hanging in the air. The crash itself, the trauma was catastrophic. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding. You shouldn't have survived the impact. He held up a series of scans. My brain scans. And this, he said, tapping the film. After that much time without oxygen, your brain, it should be catastrophically damaged. You should be, forgive me, a vegetable, if you were alive at all. But your scans are perfect. They're normal. Your internal injuries, it's like they just stopped. There's no other word for it, son. He paused and looked me straight in the eye. It's a miracle. Sarah was there, by my side the whole time. When I finally told her, hesitatingly, what had happened, what I had seen, she didn't call me crazy. She just listened, tears streaming down her face, and when I was done, she squeezed my hand and said, "I knew. I prayed so hard, Ethan. I felt you were gone, and I didn't stop praying. My body healed, but it was my soul that underwent the true transformation." The first thing I did when I got home was go into my garage. I looked at the maps, the computers, the sensitive radar equipment, the tools of my obsession. I felt nothing. The thrill was gone. The siren song of the storm was silent. It all just looked like junk, like noise. I sold it all, every last piece. The arbiter had been totaled, and I didn't even bother with the insurance claim. The man who chased storms was gone. He had died on that road. In his place was a man who craved quiet, a man who wanted nothing more than to be still. One afternoon, a few weeks after I came home, I was sitting on the porch swing with Leo. He was showing me a beetle he'd found in the grass. And I was just there. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I wasn't checking my phone. My mind wasn't on the horizon. I was looking at the iridescent shell of this tiny creature and listening to my son's excited explanation of its little legs. And in that quiet, simple moment, I felt more alive, more truly myself, than I ever had in the heart of the most powerful tornado. I felt a peace so profound it was like a memory of the field I had stood in. Sarah came out and sat with us. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head on my shoulder. And I knew the heavy, lonely blanket that had covered our marriage for so long had finally been lifted. We were present. We were together. We were in a state of grace. So I'm telling you now what he sent me back to tell you. There is a storm raging, and it is a megastorm. It isn't a hurricane that will be given a name on the news. It won't show up on any radar. The storm is in your hand right now. It's on your television. It's in the constant, churning outrage and anxiety and division that we are all encouraged to swim in every single day. He didn't tell me that technology is evil. It's not. He told me that the way we are using it is allowing the enemy to perform a great theft of our souls. We are being drowned in noise. Jesus is real. Heaven is real. His love is the most real and powerful thing in the universe. And he is calling to us from the calm in the center of the storm. He isn't asking you to build an ark of wood. He is asking you to build an ark of quiet in your heart. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you, when this is over, do one thing for me. Do one thing for him. Put your phone down. Turn off the television. Walk into the next room and find someone you love. Look them in the eye for a full minute. Don't speak. Just see them. Or go outside. Take your shoes off. Feel the grass. Be still. Find a single moment of quiet and just whisper his name. That is the shelter. That is the anchor. He is real. He is waiting. And he is the only safe harbor in this storm.